Okay, thanks very much. Those of us who are not panelists, I'll ask us to go dark and silent. And Daisy, please take it on.
All right. Well, hello. Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see such a great turnout here on a lovely Saturday. Welcome to members of MWA NorCal and other and people from other groups. We hope you enjoy this panel. I'm Daisy Bateman. I'm the incoming MWA NorCal president. Well, we've got going to have a lot of fun stuff planned for this year, so I hope you'll join us again for more things. And I will now hand it over to Claire Johnson, who is our outgoing president, who organized this lovely panel, and let her introduce it.
And thank you, Laura Sheehan, for taking the important and operation out of the Luddite hands of mine. And I also want to welcome Daisy to the presidency of NorCal. It's a great group of people. They're the best. I'd like to point out that so many of our members are and have been nominated for Lefty Awards. And I think that speaks to the strength of this meeting. So I'm going to say goodbye. My last act as NorCal president is to introduce Margaret Lucke, or more fondly known as Peggy, our moderator for this meeting. Peggy is the author of 3 mystery novels: Snow Angel, about artist P.I. Jess Randolph's search for a missing child; A Relative Stranger, which was nominated for an Anthony for Best First Mystery. Go you, Peggy. And House of Whispers, a tale of love, ghosts, and murder on the California coast. She has also written 2 how-to books on writing: Sean's Quick Guide to Writing Great Short Stories, I should read that, and Writing Mysteries. She is also a former president of the Northern California of Mystery Writers of America. And visit her at www.margaretlucke.com. Take it away, Peggy.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. I'm delighted and honored to be moderating this panel. I think it's going to be a very good one. I am I like to call it independent publisher, because to me that sounds more business-like than just self-publisher, less self-indulgent. And since I actually have a 4th book out, House of Desire, the 2 that are on my desk here behind me came out through my independent press, which is called Oakledge Press. And I've also published 3 other books through my publishing house by other authors, including Rita Lakin's book. Many of you knew her. Her last book was a romantic comedy called Prince Charming Go Home, and I had the honor of publishing that. And I would like to go ahead and introduce our panelists, many of whom have much more experience with both writing and publishing than I do. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what we're going to talk about. Please go ahead and put questions in the chat. Lori's going to be monitoring those for us. I'm going to do you all in alphabetical order because you're not necessarily going to be in any particular order on my screen here. So I'll start with Rachele Baker, who is a veterinarian and mystery author. She lives in Northern California, close to Lake Tahoe and the Napa Valley wine country, where her Riley Sunderland mysteries take place. Riley's also a veterinarian, not a veteran, and has a golden retriever named Bella. Rachele enjoys exploring the Northern California wine country, Lake Tahoe, and the California coast, and her 2nd novel, Vengeance in the Vines, was published just 1 week ago. Congratulations, Rachele, and is available on Amazon. Janet Dawson had her life of crime begin with her long-running series featuring Oakland PI Jerry Howard, whose latest case is The Things We Keep. Janet stepped back in time to the 1950s and climbed aboard the historic train known as the California Zephyr, where her sleuthing Zephyrette, Jill McLeod, assists passengers and solves crimes. Most recently in Death Above the Line, Janet also writes about geriatric care manager Kay Dexter, who advocates for elderly clients in The Sacrificial Daughter, and I hope in future books. And Janet lives in Alameda. M.K. Dean is the award-winning author of the Ginny Reese mysteries, featuring a house call veterinarian and her trusty German Shepherd sidekick. I'm sensing a theme here: veterinarians with dogs, and a good theme it is. The fourth book in her series, A Nose for Death, will be released in March of this year. As McKenna Dean, she writes paranormal romance set in the 1950s based on an elite agency charged with collecting and storing mysterious alien artifacts. She lives with her family and assorted animals on the Virginia-Carolina border, where I understand it's about to get very, very cold. But she likes putting her characters in hot water to see how strong they are, like tea bags, only deadlier. Ellen Kirschman has been an award-winning police and public safety psychologist for 40 years. She's the author of 3 nonfiction books and also the Dot Meyerhoff mystery series, which has several books to its credit. Ellen finds writing fiction to be therapeutic. She gets to take potshots at nasty cops, incompetent psychologists, and her 2 ex-husbands. Dot Meyerhoff, her protagonist, is too dedicated for her own good, takes orders from no one, including her chief, and persists in solving crimes when she should be counseling cops, often using methods that would cost the real Ellen her license. And last but not least, we have Lexa Mack, an avid mystery reader and writer. She lives with her husband, a very fat cat, 8 chickens, and this impressed me, 40,000 honeybees in the Sierras between Sacramento and South Lake Tahoe. She published her first mystery, Legacy of Lives, in 2022, and her second book, Litany of Lives, in 2024. And she serves us all as editor of MWA's newsletter, The Lineup. So, what your bios don't officially say is what your experience is as indie versus traditionally published authors. So all of you have some experiences indie. Some of you have also experiences as traditionally published. I have 4 books published by 4 different traditional publishers before I decided to go the indie route. What made you go this route? And I'm going to start with Janet for this one.
I was published by 2 large New York publishers, and they dropped me after the 9th book. And then I was published by Perseverance Press, which was, as some of you know, a California-based small press up in the area around Eureka. I published 9 books with them, and then they went out of business. One of the partners died and the other partner decided to retire. I had already at that point decided that I was going to go the indie publishing route. For several reasons. I wanted more control over my product. And it just seemed that that was the way the publishing industry was going to me. So I have now published 2 books. I formed a publishing company with a fellow writer, DZ Church, and we called it Bodie Blue Books. The first book in the K. Dexter series was independently published. And most recently, I published book number 15 in my Jerry Howard series. So it's been a satisfying experience. It has its ups and downs, but basically I felt that traditional publishing wasn't working for me anymore. After being dropped by the New York publisher, I was then dropped by my agent and went looking for another agent, and I couldn't find one. 9 books under my belt, and I couldn't find another agent. So I just thought, I'm going my own way.
Okay. So MK, how about you?
Well, I started publishing in 2010. I've written 30 books under 3 pen names, and I had 2 small publishers stop paying royalties, just flat out quit paying royalties. And at that point, I decided that I would self-publish. And really, to be honest, the whole going through the agent process, at this point in my life, 3 to 5 years to find an agent, 3 to 5 years to shop a book, 3 to 5 years to get published. I don't have that kind of time left. And an agent, a publisher would have to really offer me something I can't provide. And I'm not sure they can at this point in my life.
Agreed.
All right. Rachele, what's been your experience been?
I actually indie published a couple of nonfiction books, starting back in 2018. And then I eventually unpublished them and decided I was going to start writing fiction. I started writing cozy mysteries. And when I had my first book ready to go, I shopped for agents and I didn't get one. I got some very good feedback from them, which was helpful. And I wrote my second book. I shopped that one, didn't find an agent. And I had a very good friend who was at the same time that I was going through this, she was um, indie publishing her own books, and she kept saying, "Why don't you just indie publish them?" And eventually, I took her advice and went for it. And I think it's a good route for me because I have autonomy and I have control over my book covers and I have control over my advertising and I have control over when things get published and all of that. So I like all of that aspect of it. And I'm very happy as an indie author. I don't know if I'd be happy being traditionally published.
Okay, good. Lexa, what about you?
Yes, well, I decided I always wanted to write and never did family and career and all of those things. And when I retired, decided I would try to publish a book, try to get published, try to finish a book was really the big first hurdle, actually write the thing. And I started realizing that, again, as McKenna said, that it can take you 10 years from finishing a book to getting it actually into stores. And I didn't really have the energy and the interest in chasing down an agent. I thought I would publish one myself and see what people said. Of course, the trick is to get some of the people to actually read the book, but the ones that have read it were pretty positive, and I think I learned a lot from doing that. And then I decided to go with a kind of a hybrid publisher situation, which a couple of people that you probably know in the NorCal group use. And it's been very, very helpful to do that. So I'm considered independently published, but they're very helpful. I mean, I do have to pay them to do some stuff, but they're not one of those people that's trying to upsell you on, oh, if you'll just pay us another few $1,000s, we will market your book or whatever. They've been very, very helpful, and I'm really looking forward to going forward with the next book that I'm working on, which is actually not a mystery. I was going to tell Janet, actually, I'm working with Meredith Phillips
Yes.
as a developmental editor on my book, because I figure she knows what she's doing and she does do this freelance work. And she actually has an ad in the lineup where you can contact her if you are looking for a developmental editor. So I think I have a lot, because of doing the lineup, I have a lot of good connections. And so I'm learning an incredible amount from the people in the club that have taken
I would add that Meredith was actively involved in Perseverance Press and was my editor for all the books that I did there. In addition, she copy edited one of my books while I was published by the New York publisher. So yes, Meredith's a good one to rely on.
And just to chime in here too, that this is Claire, that she edited my book that's out now.
Wow.
So yeah.
No, she's fabulous and
Yeah.
kind and very helpful. And again, I don't know if it matters, but Indies United Publishing House is one that at least 4 or 5, I think, of the NorCal group use for their independently published books. And they do the stuff that I would never be able to do, like format the book and get it onto Amazon and give you guidance about the best way to move forward. And there's probably a lot of other things they can help you with, but so far that's what I've been doing with them. And it has their imprint rather than starting your own publishing house. So they've been really fabulous to work with too.
Okay, so Meredith Phillips and Indies United, 2 people you can put on your resource lists, those of you out there who are thinking about doing this. Ellen, your experience has been a little different in that you were traditionally published, then you did some indie publishing, and now you're traditionally published again. Tell us a little about your journey.
Well, I know that we're going to get down to the question about what newbies need to know. And so this is also under that same category. And that this is really a long-term project, publishing anything. I started out with nonfiction, and there really isn't much crossover between nonfiction and fiction. I expected there might be, but there really isn't. And my nonfiction books sell just fine, thank you, without any marketing on my end of things. So, and I just found the niche that I'm in, police psychology. So then when I started to write fiction, I first signed up with a very small publisher, courtesy of a friend. And that within 2 weeks' notice, they folded their tent and left town. Actually, I don't even think I got 2 weeks' notice. And from there, this is a couple of years ago, so I'm not clear on all the details, but I did submit my book to a traditional publisher, and they picked it up. They republished the first book that I had with the small publisher, kept the same cover, and then I published 2 books with them. The books weren't selling well, and I think it's because I went through 4 or 5 publicists with that particular publishing firm. I don't know why, but it was like a revolving door. They had publicists that would be there for a couple of months and leave. So I don't think anyone was invested in any of my books. And then later on, I came to realize that they really are better with thriller books, and that a number of, I don't know if this means anything, but number of women my age, they let go. They published and then let us go. So there's something off there, I think. And then so after they fired me, is how I like to look at it. After they fired me, I decided I would self-publish because I am one stubborn woman. And if I want my books out there, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I never meant to stay in self-publishing. I did not want the responsibility. I didn't want the work involved. I really wanted a publisher to take me on and relieve me of some of what that was involved there. And I also shopped out a great deal of the work that had to be done, formatting covers, putting it up on Amazon. I can't do that sort of work. My brain does not go that way. And then I was fortunate enough, another connection introduced me to my current publisher. They not only took my new book, but they also took my backlist of 4 books, gave me new covers, published a new book in both ebook versions and print versions. And they've been really good with publicity and with discounting the books, and they have a very large reach into the public. However, the results of that large reach have been unpredictable and not and somewhat disappointing. I do have an agent, and she has stuck with me for all these years, although I think I've paid more money to my website designer than I don't think my agents made 2 cents off me. So, but she hangs in there, so.
All right. So not always the easiest route, but traditional publishing isn't always the easiest route either. They can fold up on you, they can cancel you, they can drop you, they can go out of business.
They cannot pay your royalties.
They cannot pay your, they can just decline to pay your royalties. So some of the advantages of independent publishing, we mentioned a couple. One is that you have control over it. It doesn't, your publishing company is not going to go out of business unless you decide that that's the decision you're going to make. And the other being the time frame that's involved of getting a book out. Have all of you, when you were doing independent publishing, Ellen, you're not, but the others, I mentioned that I have started my publishing company, Oakledge Press. Janet, you mentioned yours. Did the other 3 of you, do you have an official publishing imprint that you publish your books under? I see you're nodding, McKenna. What's yours? You're muted, yes.
I do, because state laws vary, and in my state, you have to have an LLC as a publisher, you know, as someone who's writing. And so I decided to create my own publishing company. I do have some nonfiction work as well, published under that same imprint. I don't publish anybody else's work because I don't have the time to do that. But yes, it just has turned out, you know, it takes care of the tax situation. It's completely separate. I would highly recommend it to anybody who is thinking about self-publishing or being an indie publisher. And I really like the concept of calling ourselves indie publisher, because we are doing all the work. We are not indie authors, we're indie publishers.
Does your publishing company have a name?
It's called Red Claw Publishing.
Okay, very good. Lexa, what about you?
Again, I gave a little bit of thought to setting up a publishing company, but I was pretty overwhelmed by the whole idea. I don't have that much bandwidth anymore. But I went with Indies United. I don't know, Lisa Towles and Glenda and some of the other people that you know use this company and were happy with it. And I know especially Lisa had made the point that she's had a lot of interest from traditional publishers in her work, but she wants to have the control over what things happen and when they happen and how they happen. And I mean, and she, I believe, works a full-time job, but so this is a way to be independent, make those decisions, choose to pay for what you want to pay for, do what you feel you have the bandwidth to do, and get truly a hybrid situation. So that's kind of how I've been going at this point. I have probably 2 books coming out this year, and both through Indies United, and have no, you know, I recommend hiring people that know how to do what you don't want to or can't do. And I found that having a source for those kind of people has been really useful. So I'm not out looking, other than, again, I just do my own, hire my own editors to look at the work. But as far as things like getting things onto Amazon and making sure everything's on Barnes and Noble and all the places it needs to be, I'm still hoping to break even, and also actually hoping to be able to someday become a actual, not just an associate member of MWA. So I think that's been working really well for me at this point.
Okay.
I need the
And so
help.
Indies United is your official publisher name.
Yes.
Okay. Rachele, what about you? Do you have your own or
I have an imprint. It's Fleur de Soleil Books.
all right. So what's involved in starting your own publishing company? I mean, for me, it was a matter of going down to the county courthouse and registering my business name and doing that little routine, and that was pretty much it. I bought myself a bank of ISBN numbers so that I would have my own, but sounds like it's more complicated where you are, McKenna.
Not really. I did everything online. I created my own bank account and my own credit card for the company so that any advertising or I do enter a lot of awards and competitions. Any advertising or anything like that, it all goes through those accounts. And I think that's really important too. You need to keep these things separate.
Yeah. I took a small business class once years ago, and they were saying that there were 3 aspects to running any business. And I think it helps to have an entrepreneurial mindset if you're going to be an indie publisher. And there's the production, the marketing, and the financial administration ends. You have to make the product, you have to sell the product, and you have to count the money, basically. Now, we all hope there's going to be money to count. But, and I think that it's useful to think in those terms. The making the product is first you write the book, but then you've got to produce the book. You've got to turn that manuscript you've got into an actual book. So what are the steps that are involved in doing that? I mean, if you're traditionally published, you send the manuscript off to the publisher and they do everything and hopefully write you checks. But you do have to do it all yourselves, and you've all alluded to this. So what are those steps, or how do you hire it done? What do you have to do to turn your manuscript into a book that meets professional standards? Because one of the criticisms that we sometimes get with, people say, oh, self-publishing, those are terrible books. And we've all had the experience of opening a book and looking at it and saying, oh, self-published, you can tell right away with some books. But I like mine to look indistinguishable from something that would have come out of a big New York company. And I think all of us have that aim. What is involved? What do you actually have to do? You've mentioned in some cases hiring editors, because Meredith Phillips' name came up. These days, traditional publishers like it if you've already done that before you send the book to them, and agents. But what are some of the other things that you have to think about going in? I think cover design came up. McKenna,
I think there are 3 things that are really important. Cover design is critical because that is what's going to make a reader stop and take a second look at your book. If you don't have a good cover, if you don't have something that's going to catch somebody's eye in a thumbnail on an online screen, then it's going to be very hard to get their attention. And if you love designing covers, more power to you. If not, you hire somebody who's good at it. The second thing is quality editing. And I work with beta readers and crit groups, and I put my stories through editing software, and then I still pay an editor to look at it, because the worst thing you can do is pay a lot of money for a Kirkus review and have them go, wow, we really loved this book. Shame about the editing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing that I think is critical is that you have to spend some money on advertising. We are standing on the deck of Noah's Ark, releasing doves in the hopes that they will bring back some evidence of dry land out there. And the problem is that 40,000 people a day are releasing doves on Amazon. So advertising is part of this. And if I was not spending some money on ads, I wouldn't be making any sales at all. And I get good reviews and I win awards, but nobody would know I would exist otherwise.
Mhm.
Well, I have a question, probably a
Okay.
question that a lot of the people that are listening out there, that what are the best ways to advertise? I know there's Amazon ads and there's, I don't know, Google ads and there's all these things and it's very difficult to know what works and what the best bang for your buck is and how to best approach it. So,
Let's
you
get to
know,
that in a minute.
I would love some insights into
Yeah.
that.
We're going to get to that and get into the weeds of that
Okay.
in a minute. But first, I want to
Okay.
talk a little bit more about what we are going to be doing. You mentioned the editing. It's important to have an editor to get it done. Rachele, what are your thoughts on the putting the manuscript into a book form?
I think another thing that is really important is getting the interior manuscript formatted. I personally use Atticus. I think it does a gorgeous job.
Tell us
If you
what
have a
Atticus
Mac,
is for those who don't know.
I'm not seeing myself as the main person on the screen. Am I the main person on the screen from you?
You're
Yeah,
on the
Am I?
screen.
box.
Can you see
You're
this?
on.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
we can see it.
Yes.
So this is the interior formatting from Atticus. It's super cheap software. I think it was like $59 or something. It's designed by the guy that runs Kindle Prettier, who is an absolute genius. If you have a Mac software, there's one that the Mac people use, Vellum. This one, the Atticus, is for PC people like me.
Mhm.
But anyway, so that's important too. And these covers, I paid a professional artist to do the illustration, and then I paid a cover designer to do the typography. I spent a lot of money on this, but I feel like the investment is worth it because, like, I think McKenna was mentioning how, like, this is your first impression and this is how you sell your book. People look at your cover, and if they're not attracted to it, and if it doesn't speak to your genre, or there's something off about it, or if it looks unprofessional, or it looks homemade or something, you're not going to sell books. So that's another really important thing.
I would second the praise on Atticus. When I did The Sacrificial Daughter, I formatted it myself, and I think it needs to be reformatted. When I did The Things We Keep, I used Atticus, and I found it very easy to do. And it's a pretty good program. I also have BookBrush, which I use for ads. I want to comment about covers. I've experimented with doing my own covers and came to the conclusion that I'm not very good at it. So it's worth it to me to pay somebody else to do it.
Mhm.
And I have several people doing varying things. Have a look for the Jerry Howard books, and those covers are done by Sue Trowbridge, who is
Okay.
my web guru. For The Sacrificial Daughter, I used Karen Phillips, who's a NorCal writer, and I had all sorts of ideas about what I wanted, and she did covers. I'm going to get that book.
Okay.
She did samples and then came up with this all on her own. And it wasn't any of my ideas, but I looked at that cover and said, yeah, that's it. And I recently did a cover through a company called 100 Covers that was it was relatively inexpensive, and they came up with a cover for my standalone, The Things We Keep, that I really like, but it took many weeks of back and forth
Yeah.
of me saying, "I want that. No, that's not quite right." So it pays to go in various different directions to try and find that right cover, but sometimes you'll just know it when you see it.
I have a friend who used those for a historical novel that she's about to put out and was very happy with the result. I've seen the cover and I like it, and I think it suits the book quite well. And there was some back and forth, quite a bit of back and
A
forth
lot of back and
between
forth.
her and the cover artist. So there's editing that you have to think about. And it's good to have somebody else do that because we all have blind spots when it comes to our own work. There's the interior look of the book, which really, to my mind, makes a difference. I've done my own formatting, but I have a graphic design background that not everybody has. And there's the covers. Are there any other key elements that you have to take into consideration or that you might want to hire somebody to do for you as you put your book out before we get to the marketing part? Yes, MK.
I would like to say one thing about covers. So this series, the Jenny Reese Mysteries, you can see that there's all, the covers all have a theme. They all look very similar. I bought those covers as a pre-made set for very little money. And I liked them. And when I decided that I wanted to continue writing in the series, I went back to the artist who created them and said, look, I want to continue this. Do I need to rebrand the entire series, or can we still make more covers in this series? And she's like, oh, I can keep doing that forever. So don't be afraid to check out these artists, these cover artists that have pre-made sections on their website. You may find something that is completely what you need.
Good point.
Okay. Yes. One of the things that I have discovered is that there is an entire cottage industry out there of people who are willing to help you, some of whom are very, very good. I mean, you do have to kind of vet them a little bit, but there's excellent editors out there. There's excellent interior designers. There's excellent cover designers. And we were talking earlier about this, and it was mentioned, be aware of what your skill set is and what your comfort level is in doing certain things, and be willing to hire it out. There's a disadvantage to indie publishing is it's going to cost you some money up front. Whether you're buying the software or ordering a cover, something like Atticus, which is not terribly expensive, but covers and some of these other services, editing services with a good editor can run into a little money. So that's, a disadvantage compared to the indie publisher. But again, you've got control over what it looks like. I've had traditional published books where, frankly, the cover was terrible. Traditional publishers do not always know how to make wonderful covers. But
The covers of the British editions of the first Jerry Howard books, I have to say, were among the worst covers I have ever seen.
I can
They were
believe that.
absolutely dreadful.
I remember being in a book room at a Left Coast Crime or a BoucherCon, I forget which it was, looking at a traditionally published book on the dealer's table and trying to figure out what the name of the book was and what the author's name was, because the cover was so badly designed you couldn't even figure out those basic things. Okay.
Not a good thing.
As we get into the weeds of marketing, I do have a quick question for you. One of the decisions that an indie publisher has to make is whether to go exclusively with Amazon, because Amazon is probably the primary publishing platform, the way that you take that beautifully designed book and beautifully edited book that you now have and making it available to the world, or go wide. Going wide means you make it available on a whole variety of platforms. What have you done and why? Lexa, what does Indie United do?
Well, Indies United, I think, advises to not check that little box that says Amazon exclusive. And I believe that it's so that you can be on these other platforms. I don't know that I've ever actually sold anything on any of those platforms.
Mhm.
And so based on that, I'm guessing that they feel the advantage is, you know, the breadth of who you may or may not be reaching. I would be really interested to hear from other people who do the Amazon exclusive, because again, with Indies United, I could say that's what I want to do. They, you know, I get to pick, but I don't. I'd like to hear what the experience was with that and what the advantages to that or disadvantages are.
Okay. Rachele, what do you do?
I tried going wide, and when I had my nonfiction books out and I was on Barnes and Noble and whatever, I didn't find that I made hardly any sales anyplace besides Amazon. And the thing to notice is that when we're exclusive to Amazon, it's only for our ebooks. It's not for our paperbacks and our hardbacks. And I am currently in the process of having my paperback and hardback on Ingram Spark, and that will get it delivered to bookstores and libraries. And so it doesn't mean you can't publish your print books. It's only for the ebooks.
Okay. Ellen, what were you doing when you had your publishing, when you were doing your show, you're doing it yourself?
I think I went with just the Kindle Unlimited. With my traditional publisher now is on several different
Mhm. Okay. And wide includes things like Barnes and Noble, Apple Books,
Kobo.
iBooks, Kobo is one.
Oh.
Ingram Sparks is mainly a print platform that in theory allows you to get into bookstores if the bookstores have an Ingram account. It doesn't mean that the bookstores will order it unless somebody comes in and actually says, hey, can you order this book for me? But they, in theory, can do that. Janet, what do you do?
My books are exclusive to Amazon. I did the going wide thing a number of years ago, sold a little bit here and there, you know, on Apple, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, and I had to say 95% of my sales were Amazon. So for the time being, I'm sticking with Amazon. Until if we get to the point where that doesn't work anymore, and then we'll have to consider something else.
And how about you, MK?
So I've done both. And I will say the advantages and disadvantages are, if you are not in KU, it is very hard to become an Amazon bestseller in any category. All you have to do is look at the bestsellers in your genre, and you will see that most of them are in KU. However, and this is a big however, unless you can police the internet constantly and make sure that illegal downloads of your books are not out there in print form on the internet, you are at risk of being in violation of Amazon's terms of service, and they can cut your account dead cold with no recourse whatsoever. They can just go, yep, sorry, you're out. And I know people who've lost accounts because of this. I personally don't have time to monitor websites constantly. I was doing it at one point, and I found a website where a bundle of my books had been uploaded and downloaded 16,000 times.
Wow.
16,000 times of illegal downloads that I never saw a dime of. And most of these companies, Amazon gives you 48 hours to pull the plug on something like that. And most of these companies don't respond to you. You just don't exist. I am currently rethinking my position on this. I kind of feel like that going KU, going Amazon exclusive is a little bit like feeding virgins to the dragon to keep them from eating your village. But once you run out of virgins, your village is going to be in danger. And I do kind of worry about what happens when Amazon destroys every other platform out there. What value will we as authors have? Might not happen in my lifetime, but I do think about it. For me, it's the policing that makes it very hard. But I am currently working on a new series, new genre, and I'm considering going KU. I am. I have a
Explain
friend.
what KU is.
So it's Kindle Unlimited, and it's like having a Netflix account. When you have a Netflix account, you get to watch whatever's on Netflix for a flat fee per month. And when you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read whatever is in Kindle Unlimited for a flat fee per month. Romance does really well in this category. Mysteries can do well. It depends, mystery readers can be kind of voracious. But again, when you sign that form, you are saying that your digital books, excuse me, are exclusive to Amazon, and they are not available anywhere else, not in libraries, not in any other digital format online. And so that's where you can sometimes run into trouble.
Well, how does the author, if it's a flat fee and they can read as much as they want, how does the author get compensated?
The author gets paid by the page, pennies by the page. And every year, and not every year, every couple of months, they're like, this is our Amazon Global Fund, and it's like, 0.004 cents per page. But I also have a friend who's had 3 million page reads. And when you do the math, it adds up. So it's I go back and forth on this all the time, but once you go wide, it's very, very hard to go Kindle Unlimited, because you have to strip that ebook from every single source, and libraries are really slow to let go. Hoopla and Overdrive and things like that are really, really slow to terminate that contract. So my current series is wide. I will probably, with my next series, try KU. I'll just see what happens.
Okay, good. All right, let's get into those now that we've got the book up there on the publishing platform. Let's get into those marketing weeds. And frankly, the marketing weeds are, thick and dense for traditionally published authors as well as independent authors, because in my experience, most of the traditional publishers these days, this was not always the case. There's a movie on KQED tonight, Channel 9 in the Bay Area called Genius, about Maxwell Perkins and his working with Thomas Wolfe and Fitzgerald and Hemingway back in the days when editors at publishing houses really worked intimately with authors and helped them out. Publishing is different today. Good movie, though. You might want to check it out for a blast from the past. But here we are. No matter how we're published, we're kind of faced with making readers aware of our books and care about our books. Kind of the two key words, aware and care, of marketing. So what kind of marketing have you been doing to let your prospective readers know that this wonderful book is out there? What strategies have been most effective for you? Who'd like to jump in? Rachele? And then Ellen?
I think one thing that's really very important for any indie author is to make sure that they have a mailing list and a newsletter, because that is your audience, and that is your audience that no one can take away from you. If the algorithms change at Amazon or Facebook or wherever, you still have your audience. And so growing and building an email list and having a monthly newsletter and having those people that are interested in your work and direct contact with you is crucial. As far as advertising, I have done a ton of advertising. I've done Facebook ads, BookBub ads, book funnel, joint things, book sweeps, Amazon, I've done a lot of ads. And I would say the most successful ads that I've run so far, by far, are my Facebook ads. It took me a long time to figure out how to make them work. It's not like if you just throw something up there and everything works. I mean, it's a matter of learning what keywords are effective, learning what graphics are effective, learning what price you should be having, and there's a lot of moving parts. So it's a steep learning curve, but my Facebook ads have been quite effective. I do have um, indie author friends who have had wonderful success with their BookBub featured deals. I applied for one recently. I didn't get approved for it, but I just applied for a BookBub new releases for less for my Vengeance in the Vines that just came out, and I got accepted for it. So that's coming up next week, and I'm super curious to see how that goes. Hopefully it will go well. But yeah, Facebook is, I know a lot of indie authors, I have a lot of indie author friends. Facebook is really a big one. And then I also do Amazon ads. So my Facebook ads and my Amazon ads are constant. They're on all the time. And then I do other things as well.
Okay, good. I'm taking notes. Ellen?
So in my experience, I think nobody knows the answer to the question about what works. If they did, we'd all be doing it. I agree with Rachele. I have a newsletter and I work hard at that, and I have a website, which I also work hard at that. I use a wonderful folks called Zuni, xuni.com. They do both my newsletter and my website, and they actually design bookmarks for me. They're terrific. If you go to their website, you see they do mostly authors things. You'll recognize a million names on there, and they're very responsive, and they've become friends over the years, because I don't want to do that. I would have 3 sobbing attacks every time I tried to figure out how to post a photo in my newsletter. So it's better to spend money there than on therapy, because I'd need that trying to do it myself. When I went into my brief stint with self-publishing, I hired a woman named Julie Smith. Some of you may know her. She runs an outfit called Books Be Nimble. I think she's still in business, and she does only online marketing. She redesigned my covers. They put the books together in terms of getting them formatted for ebooks. And then she rewrote all my cats. I had to figure out what a cat was for a while. It's a category on Amazon. And she wrote them and hyped them up a great deal from what I had originally written. And then she sends notices of books out to, I don't know who, 80 million small book clubs, newsletters, but she just boosted my sales for a couple of months. Much more than the traditional publisher I just left had ever done. I had to pay her to do this. Heather Haven works with her or worked with her. Janet, did you work with her?
Yeah, Heather and I are still with her.
Okay, so
I believe that Julie wants you to have a certain, like 3 books in a series. You have to be fairly well established.
What's your name again? Julie Smith, Books Be Nimble.
And she needs, I think it's 3 or 4 books, which I had when I went to her. And then she needs a number of 5-star reviews too on Amazon before she'll take you on. I don't know how she did it, but my book reviews went up multiple times, more people reviewing it. So I thought she was really very helpful, but this is money. You got to spend money to do that. Are you still happy working with her, Janet?
I am.
What else are you doing, Janet?
I have a couple of books that are not with Julie. My standalone and my The Sacrificial Daughter, which is at this point is a standalone, but I call it the first in a new series. I just have to get around to writing the next one. And I've been trying a combination of things. I've tried some BookBub ads. I've tried some Amazon ads. I would be interested in exploring what Rachele is doing with Facebook ads. I don't know. It's hard. I used to say when I was traditionally published by the big New York publisher that they operated on the throw spaghetti against the wall theory, which was, as far as advertising, they would just throw the book at the wall to see if anything stuck. But yeah, I've been happy with what Julie has been doing. She does a lot of advertising, and every month I have 2 or 3 books that are free for a short period of time. I've had several BookBub featured deals that have been really effective, although the last one was not. And I think part of that is because it was on Thanksgiving Day. That's just happened to be when it hit. So I don't know. I wondered after that experience whether the BookBub featured deal had lost its effectiveness. I'm not sure. We'll see.
I've been on BookBub a few times. I've never paid for it. It's been something my publisher has done. And I have no entrepreneurial spirit at all. I do not check these things when they come up. I don't keep track of what does what. So when I say I don't know what works, it's also because I never look. That's part of it. But I am finding, and I think we talked about this earlier, that I'm starting to review more books on BookBub and starting to amass a number of followers. And I find the BookBub site very easy to navigate. I think Goodreads drives me crazy. I can't figure out how the damn thing works. So, but BookBub does, and I'm trying to do things that I enjoy, not things that irritate me. And there's a lot out there I find really irritating, but I can do the BookBubs and post reviews. And
I would second that. What Ellen has said, I would definitely second that about I'm reviewing things on BookBub, and I find invariably if I review several books, I get more followers, and I often get people signing up for my newsletter.
Lexa, does Indies United handle all of this for you, or are you doing some marketing on your own?
I think they can. I haven't really done anything with it. Again, that's why I asked the question. You know, there's a lot of things out there that sound good. They're connected to big networks or to big companies or something. But again, I have, you know, I'm totally willing to spend some money to not so much make some money, but I want people to read my books. You know, I sometimes give them away. Actually, most successful thing I've done so far is go to like libraries and go places and just sell my books, because I mean that's where most of my books have sold, is out of the back of my car. Because, you know, just because then you're there and you can talk to them, and I think that's what ads need to do, but I haven't known really how to do it. So I do get things from BookBub. I absolutely will follow up on some of these, but again, it's so hard to know where to spend your money and where to spend your effort and your time. I was thinking that Ellen Kirschman's talking about the Marie Kondo version. If it doesn't spark joy, don't do it. And again, that's a lot the way I feel. I don't mind doing things, and they don't have to be super profitable for me or whatever, or even profitable, but they have to be something I feel good about, that somebody's picking up the book, that somebody's reading it, that, you know, there's a woman I know, I often refer to her, and I won't give her name, but she takes great pride in the fact that almost every time I see her, she tells me she started my book, but she never finished it. So, that's her claim to fame. And I have yet to ask her why, just because I won't give her the satisfaction. But I want people to read the stuff. So I just would like to know what the best way to do it. So I actually will look into some of this stuff, but I look at Books Be Nimble. I'll look at the BookBub ads and different ways of doing it. It's just I get overwhelmed pretty easily with the masses of stuff that's available.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did want to mention, there's a website called shepherd.com, which is trying to position itself as a new and different Goodreads, I guess. And they're doing some interesting things, and I feel that I need to set aside some time and look at what they're doing and see how I could use that to my advantage. Last year, I was invited by shepherd.com to do something that I thought was interesting, since I write the California Zephyr series that's set mostly on a train in the 1950s. They have a feature where they ask you to submit a list of 5 books that have something to do with the subject of your book. And I had a lot of fun with that. Submitted various books that take place on a train, obviously Agatha Christie, Murder on the Orient Express, but Alistair MacLean's Breakheart Pass is an example, and just wrote a paragraph, first a paragraph about this is my book, and then a paragraph about each of these books and why I liked them. So shepherd.com is doing some interesting things. It's worth exploring.
Okay. MK, what is your marketing strategies? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you?
So
What
I
would you
think
recommend?
there's 3 things. Okay. The first is that I second everything that everybody has said about BookBub. I will also say that once you hit 1,000 followers, you can take advantage of certain BookBub author features. They will send out a book blast when you have a release, that sort of thing. And so that is an additional service that they provide. And the other thing that I would say is the algorithm on what makes a good ad work changes all the time. And I would suggest that if you want to get into ads, when I first started looking into them, I was losing money on ads big time. I was spending more than I made in a terrible, terrible way. And I took some courses. I worked with some people. And Brian Cohen offers a free Facebook group periodically where he teaches you how to do Amazon ads. I ended up actually buying the course because I could never finish the course in the time frame that was offered. I also work with Alana Terry. She's done courses on Facebook ads. But again, this stuff changes all the time. And I am not of a mindset where, I want to study the algorithms and manipulate the stats and do A/B testing and what have you. I just want to put an ad out there and have it work. And I'm at the point now where I'm not losing money on ads, but still it's a lot of work. But the third thing I would say is pick 1 or 2 social media platforms that you enjoy. And you be there and do the thing. And every other place out there, you put your name up as a placeholder. So if somebody stumbles across it, they could go to your LinkedIn link, they can find you on other places. But you have to spend some time on social media, not all social media, and don't spend time where you're not happy. I will tell you a little TikTok story just to give you a point of reference why people are so upset about TikTok and Book Talk disappearing. I had a stacked promotion for a free book, An Embarrassment of Itches, the first in the Jenny Reese mysteries. A couple days before the promotion was supposed to start, it got leaked to a Facebook group online. They were like, "Ooh, this book is going to be free." And so I kind of said, well, just roll with it. Just go ahead and push the promotion out. So Facebook group that was not mine, couple hundred downloads. I sent out a newsletter, couple hundred downloads. I announced it on Facebook myself, couple of hundred downloads. I announced it on TikTok, 7,000 downloads.
These are free downloads?
Free downloads. It was a free book, but I got 375 reviews as a result of this promotion, and it translated into more sales in the series and more reviews in the series. So, you know, I see books that are well reviewed and well, you know, people are like, oh, I really love this book. It's got 5 reviews. You know, so that's one of the huge challenges as an indie author. For one thing, we are shut out of many of the main book awards. You know, if you're not trad published, forget about applying to the Edgars. Forget about applying to, you know, the Agathas. It's not going to happen. So that right there is a certain level of stigma that comes in with being indie published. And then the second part of that is there are a lot of people who absolutely refuse to read an indie book because they're like, well, it's not going to be well edited. We're not. So we have that stigma to overcome. And it's very, very hard to get reviews. It's very hard to get reviews. So for me, that promotion, you know, I was, you know, I'm getting ready to release the 4th book in the series. I was like, yeah, I'll make the first book free. Can't get a BookBub deal because the cozy mystery category is so huge on BookBub. It's really, really hard to get a BookBub deal in that category. So, you know, this worked for me. And all I can say is, you know, that was a huge eye opener for me. These are not people that I knew. I don't have 7,000 followers on TikTok, but yeah.
Interesting.
I thought TikTok, my readers, my demographic group would be older women. Are they on TikTok?
Some. The truth of the matter is that my demographic is on Facebook. And it's not a platform I enjoy, and I don't spend much time there. That may be why I'm not very successful. So, I mean, you have to, if you want to say, I made all the mistakes, so you don't have to, then, you know, do what I do.
But it was TikTok that got you all those reviews.
It was TikTok that got me all those reviews. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to say something about podcasts and interviews because I have done a gajillion of those to promote Call Me Carmela, my most recent release. And I mean, one of them got 16,000 hits. Did that sell a book? I have no idea. And when I looked at some of the podcasts that I did with people, you see they have maybe 17 people listen to it.
Oh.
So was that, you know, was that worth an hour of my time to do that? That's really hard to know. The same thing about bookstore appearances. I like bookstore appearances because I like book clubs. I like to face to face and interact with live human beings. But you don't, for those that are really new out there, you don't sell books at bookstores. You know, but it's a good thing to do and a good thing to support your local bookstores too.
And what you hope is that ultimately it gets your name out and that all of these efforts will build on each other and you know, gradually have payback. Another piece of advice that I heard several years ago that I have not been following was from Bella Andre, who was making, as an indie author, you know, a substantial 6-figure income, at least there for a while. And her word of advice in one program that I heard her speak is that books sell books. That if you want to sell books, you've got to keep writing more books and getting new ones out there, and, you know, have that long running series so that somebody will discover you at book 5 or book 6 and then want to go back and read the others. And the expectation in the traditional publishing industry is a book a year.
Yeah.
And I know a number of authors who are putting out books particularly indie authors who are putting out books more frequently than that. So that's where a certain amount of our effort, I think, has to go, is to writing the book.
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay. So what have you found helpful? I've been making some notes as we've been going along. I hope other people have too, about some of the resources that have been mentioned. Are there other resources that are helpful to indie publishers, indie authors that have not been mentioned in terms of sources of advice or whatever? Rachele, what do you have?
I just wanted to bring up something about the subject of reviews, something that I just used
Okay.
for my most recent book launch. And I don't know if you guys have heard of it or not, but there's a NetGalley co-op that's meant for indie authors. It's run by Anne Victory, and it's called she's the editor, and her company is called Victory Editing, but she has a NetGalley co-op that's for indie authors. So you can get your book on NetGalley for a month instead of like the 6 months. You can do it for a month, and it costs $57, and you're up on NetGalley, and um, you have the ability to approve or disapprove anybody that wants to read your book, and each person that applies to read your book, you can see what reviews they've written. You can see if they're reading your genre or not, and you can see how many reviews they've written and all of that. So you have complete control over that. And I got a bunch of very nice reviews from it. I found it to be um, a very good experience.
What was
So that
this
was something I
person's
could
name
really
again who's running
recommend.
that?
Sorry, that?
What was that person's name again who's running that?
It's called Victory Editing, and the lady
Okay.
that runs it, her name is Anne Victory, and it's a NetGalley co-op just for indie authors.
Okay. Anyone else want to give a shout out to something? Okay. Google how to be a successful independent publisher, and you'll come up with all kinds of things. Some of them helpful and some of them less helpful. Okay. We're about out of time. Do we have any questions, Lori?
We do. I just popped in here, so I've gotten some things on my own, and some things were posted. You guys did a great job of covering marketing and publicizing your works. That was one of the questions that came in. One of the things that I found really compelling in there was that Janet mentioned that if she reviews other people's books, she then gets more followers and more people that sign up for her own newsletter. So I think that is a really great piece of advice. What do you guys think? So author events and book launches, Lexa mentioned giving books away. You can only do that if you leave the house and don't sit around in your pajamas, which I have a tough time with, but like that's a whole different story. Do you guys have good cooperative agreements with, maybe not that formal, but with your local bookstores and libraries? Do you go? MK, is that something you do? I see you nodding.
Well, I made a big push back in October. I made a list of all the indie bookstores in my area, several of which were completely like inaccessible due to Hurricane Helene, which, you know, that put that off. But most of them have a process that you have to go through in order for them to accept your book, which I understand. You know, they've got to have so many people walking in off the street going, you know, I have a book I want you to publish. I want you to post. I will tell you that most of the places that I've gone to have accepted my books. I have a book that is sitting in our local bookstore that has been there for a very long time. I sneaked in one day and signed it, and it's still there. And I'm going to have to go buy the bloody thing myself, or you're send in a ringer so that it will not keep sitting there on the shelf because they're not going to buy it.
People
No
will
one's
think
going to.
it's just the next book. Like the first one sold, you put a new one in there.
Right. But here's the thing that you also have to consider. When you work with Ingram Spark to sell your books, to print hardcover and so forth, you have to set that price high enough that you meet the printing costs. All right. And that's a pretty steep price. It's higher than Amazon. It's higher than anywhere else. Then the second factor to that is you have to mark those books as returnable. And if you do not mark them as returnable, Barnes and Noble and independent bookstores are not going to buy inventory because they don't want to be stuck with it. And if they buy it and they don't sell it and it's in solid print form, you as the author are responsible for the cost of printing those books. And I've heard of people getting bills for thousands of dollars because of returned books. So it makes me a little leery.
I think this happened. I think this happened to a bunch of people at Lefko's. I mean, at BoucherCon,
It did.
because of the books never arriving, and I think Misty Berry got stuck with quite a
Yeah, I
huge
think
bill.
she did.
And yeah, I think also something that is relatively new that I've encountered, and this used not to be the case, is the issue of commission. And if I buy books from my publisher, I don't get the book sales, right? Okay, so I can buy them at discount from my publisher, but I don't get book sales. And the commission on the books is often so high that I'm lucky if I break even. Now, I sort of question the whole issue of the bookstore thing. I'm gonna make a big push in the new year. Oh, it is the new year, when I actually can move since my back is out. But how much sense does this make? Is it one of those loss leader things that if I lose $1 on every book, does that make sense? I mean, in some ways, being with a small publisher is like being with an indie publisher, because Level Best is not doing much for me in that regard. And that's, I knew that going into the contract. But if I have to, do I lose $1 on every book, the first book in the series, hoping I'll get the next book sales in the second series, the second book in the series? I don't know. I mean, the dollars and cents are kind of, they're squishy.
Right. Those are good points too. So
I have one of my books I did with Indie Spark, and this was not true when I first put it up there. But now the cost of printing the book, what they charged if the book is ordered, exceeds the price I have on the book.
Yes.
Right.
But the price I have on the book is competitive with other books in my genre. It's what readers expect to pay. So if I raise the price on the book, then that's a barrier to a reader wanting to purchase it. So
Yeah.
And printing costs have gone up across the
I'm going to
industry.
jump in here as somebody whose first book came out in 1990, at the beginning of time, when we had a lot more bookstores. We had a number of really good mystery bookstores. I used to go to Los Angeles over a long weekend and sign at 5 or 6 mystery bookstores. Those days are gone. The mystery bookstore we had in San Francisco closed. The one in San Mateo closed.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, that was a great bookstore.
I used to go to do events at bookstores like Black Oak Books in Berkeley and have 20 or 30 people in the audience. Those days are gone. People are buying books online. I don't do a lot of bookstores. I don't find them to be effective. The effective venues that I have found are libraries. Daisy Bateman and I both live here in Alameda. We've had some good gigs at the Alameda Free Library. Our local bookstore here in Alameda is not very friendly, in my opinion. The other place where I've had some bang up signings is my local senior center. Think about it. You've got a captive audience of older people who like to read. They ask good questions and they buy books.
Yeah.
I've got another gig coming up in a couple of months at the local branch of the American Association of University Women. So there are other places aside from bookstores where you can go. It's
Yeah,
just a
absolutely.
matter of beating the weeds and finding them. And I'm also at a point where I'm not interested in leaving my house as frequently. They used to say when my first book came out that I would crawl over glass. This is a quote from the owner of the San Francisco Mystery Bookstore, that I would crawl over broken glass to sell a book. That's not true anymore.
I'm going to point out that Rossmore has a mystery book club, and I went there and I sold another book, a number of books, and I was the youngest person in the room, and we all know I'm not that young, but
You're younger than me.
this is true, not by much, and people were interested. I mean, they were there. The room was filled with 20 people, and I sold like 10 books.
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I also have found that
Right.
doing events with other authors can
Absolutely.
be helpful,
Yeah,
because you
Yeah.
draw in the people who are there to support them or who are interested in their books, and a lot of them turn out to be interested in your book too once they're introduced to it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and it can help build the audience to have more than one.
exactly.
Similar experience at a senior center, retirement home. A bunch of really interesting, interested people in the audience who didn't have anything else to do with their time.
Yeah.
And so, and I distributed my stress balls, which I give out as swag, and they absolutely thought that was wonderful because they have a lot of arthritis. And now I'm of that age myself, so we had a lot in common. Let's put it that way.
So I feel like this, of course, we could keep this conversation going for hours more. I know Daisy wants to say something. There are a couple of more questions that we could probably tackle really quickly. Daisy, you want to say something before we move in?
Oh, I was just going to weigh in on the cost of printing. Just it's up across the industry. Paper prices have shot up, and a couple of the what had been printers have closed. So that is just an industry-wide issue. But yeah, no, I don't. That was just what I wanted to weigh in on in the
Yeah.
conversation.
So other notes that things I read in the chat just to me, and things that I've made a note of, our author events. We mentioned Left Coast Crime, BoucherCon. Those are both giant fan conferences. If you go and you're really engaging with your fans, you're going to get more people who want to be around you and feel compelled to read your books because they find you interesting. So those are great things. Yeah, MK.
So I went to the last BoucherCon, and at the end of the trip, I had all of these books left over, and it was going to cost a ridiculous amount of money to send them home. And I was wearing a t-shirt that said, "Cozy Mystery Writer, I kill people for a living." And I would just randomly hand books out on the bus stop, at the grocery store. People would see the shirt and they would go, "Oh, you write books?" And then I'd be like, "Yeah, pull it out. Here, have a book." Did it do any good? I have no idea, but the shirt did. I talked to people, the baristas at the coffee shop, and people selling bagels, and people in the airport. That t-shirt stopped people cold, and they wanted to come over and talk to me about the fact that I wrote books.
Yeah, and there are a lot of little grassroots things going on. I don't know if you know Kate. She writes as Ellie Alexander. One of her series is set in Ashland, and she's done such a great job of promoting that town. She's just done her second year of having a cozy mystery event up there, and the town loves her so much that the bakery that she features in her book, it has a different name, but for the weekend of this event, they had aprons printed with the bakery of the name in her book, and they just became the bakery for the weekend. So when the fans came in, they were stepping into this place that was right out of Ellie's book. So when you can engage your local, where your book's at, if you set your book close to home, people like that. Like the merchants, as long as you treat them well, they're really engaged with that. Or your local museum, and we have a lot of, I don't know if Lexa's done it, but we've got some of our, and I think Daisy has, we've got some good wineries in the area. They will actually host author events where the authors can go and read their books. Did you do that, Janet?
With my California Zephyr books that are set on the old California Zephyr, I did research up at the Western Pacific Railroad Museum in Portola, which is up by Quincy, California, and actually paid money to drive a locomotive. And I've done a couple of signings up there. They order my books, which sell very well in the gift shop. And several years ago, I was invited to speak at the Western Pacific Historical Convention, which was in Sacramento that year. So getting in touch with whatever little niche you have.
If you're interested in doing wineries, Lisa Towles is the person to contact.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's done a number of events at wineries.
Okay,
I
so
announced to,
go ahead, Al. Sorry.
I belong to a fitness center and I take Zumba and some other classes. And I announced to the class that I was a writer, and right before my book launch, I have fans now. I had that same reaction. Somebody else said, "You write books?" It's sort of like I had announced I was a brain surgeon or something. And people bought my books. Now, whether they reviewed them or not, I ask everybody all the time, please review my book. But that I was really surprised at the reaction, and I handed out bookmarks. And they've all seen me in my sweats and my.
I
We
did
should
the
all
same
get
thing.
McKenna's t-shirt to wear
I
to our
know, and
exercise
we're all
classes.
competing. I did the same thing in my 2 yoga classes, and I
Yeah.
sold books.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun, and I enjoyed that, doing that.
Yeah.
All right, so couple quick more things. MK, you said at one point, good thumbnail. What are we looking for in a thumbnail so we can see it? Those small little things.
So your cover has to be representative of the genre, right? If you write paranormal romance, you're going to have like a shifter kind of thing on the cover, and that's how readers identify what genre this book is. If you are looking at creating covers for your book, you need to go and look and see what the top selling covers are and make sure that your cover is going to reflect what is popular in your genre. And so, and again, it's got to be something that's going to look good small. So you don't want something with font that is so ornate that it's not readable, or you've got so many details on it that it's not perceivable. So the cover of An Embarrassment of Itches is a little cartoonish, and it clearly implies that this is not Law and Order, right? That yes, maybe people die, but we're all kind of happy about it.
Not a police procedural, right?
Right. And it's important that you have that information available, because your audience is going tick, 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 tick.
Exactly.
And you got to have something that's going to make them stop. So the cover is what makes them stop, and the blurb is what makes them take a second look.
Nice. So the cover
good
and the
cover,
blurb.
good blurb.
I'll use Rachele just because her books are prominently featured behind her. And I think maybe Ellen picked up her book too, but those are very identifiable, cozy-ish. I would think they were cozies, and I would look at them. So Ellen, you reached aside when we started this conversation. Did you pick up your book? Yep.
So yeah, I don't know that this is a defining cover, but the covers are beautiful and eye-catching, and
It is, yeah.
And you have a brand theme.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you hold up all the covers, you could say, "Oh, these books belong together."
That was
And branding is a key word these days in author marketing.
Yeah.
Is what is your author brand? And even if you're going for traditional publishing, they want to know that, or they want to have some basis on which to build that for you. So that's too good. I noticed that Rachele's books have dogs on the cover, and that right there tells me, oh, cozy mystery, because dogs and cats seem to be the thing. And we mentioned earlier our unfortunately late colleague Camille Minikino, who wrote Cozy Mysteries, but was not really a dog or cat person. And would always get so irritated. They went and put a cat on my cover. There's no cat in this book.
Well, that's my favorite story. Some of the old timers will remember Johnny Jacobs.
Yes.
And she got a cover back from her editor, and there was a dog on the cover. And she wrote, not super cozy, but somewhat cozy suburban mysteries. And anyway, she sees this dog on the cover, and Johnny says to her editor, "Well, I don't have a dog in this book." And the response was, "The dog stays. Dogs sell." So,
And that's yeah, and
so
that's
and the dog stayed on the cover. Yeah.
Daisy made a good point in the chat that her titles now are also lending themselves to being recognizable as sort of a theme or
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah.
process that she's going to adopt in naming her books. Is that right, Daisy?
Well, it wasn't my idea. My publisher renamed my first book to She Left, and then as you can see up there, and the next one that's out in August started out as being called The Glass House, but it turns out, I think there've been several books with that title, and so now that one is She Didn't Stand a Chance. And the book that I'd called The Last Normal Day is now She Had Enough. That's what I'm working on now. So, yeah, consistent branding is something that everybody wants.
Yeah, there's
You
a
see
reason
that
why
a
all
lot with titles. My
Yes.
paranormal series, I have House of Whispers, House of Desire. I'm working on House of Shadows now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So real quick, and it's just Janet, in 10 words or less, you were talking about Jerry Howard 13 coming out. Those began traditionally published. Did you have to fight to get your rights back to self-publish those books?
Actually, this is Jerry Howard 14.
14, okay.
No, I didn't have to fight to get my rights back because they dropped me at a time when ebooks the publishers were not even thinking about ebooks. They dropped me in, I think, 2000. So I benefited from the timing because that was a point at which the publishers were going, ebooks, it'll never fly. So I got back, no problem.
Oh no.
Well, that's
Oh
good. I'm
no.
glad you didn't have to battle that. Yes, Ellen.
I got mine back also without any problem. I think I was the first person to ask that particular publisher for my rights back. I did have to pay for my inventory that they had, and that's fine. I mean, I just managed to get rid of those books. I didn't sell them, but I think I put them in book bags at Left Coast Crime.
Yeah, so those are pretty much the questions that I've gotten. I don't want we have been together a long time this afternoon. I want to leave Janet time for, or sorry, I want to leave Peggy time for closing words, and also Daisy. Two more things that we can talk about another time. Because this could be a long conversation. TikTok might be going away, but the consumers and the content that shouldn't. So the next TikTok. So give some thought to what the next TikTok is going to be, and maybe we can talk about that another day. So those are the questions that were asked of me. Yeah, what was that, MK?
I said I have thoughts because I'm a big TikTok person. I have 3 accounts, and yeah, it's going to be rough.
Yeah. So the last two things that I want to point out are just a couple of my personal prizes for today. I think the best cat video bombing goes to Janet, who we continue to see a visitor come into her screen. And I'm going to give today's prize for best metaphors to MK for releasing doves and sacrificing virgins. So now I'm going to hand it back over to Peggy and Daisy and let them round up today's event.
Okay, well, I want to thank Rachele and Ellen and McKenna, MK, Janet and Lexa, that's the order you are on my screen at the moment, for all of your wisdom. I learned a lot today, so I will put a lot of that to use. I was taking notes the whole time we were speaking.
Me too.
So thank you for your time. Thank you for your words of wisdom. Thank you for the inspiration you provided to me and to hopefully to everybody. And thank you to all of our audience for being out there and for listening.
Thank you.
In the chat
Thank
now,
you.
you've got, thanks everyone. The MWA
was
NorCal
fun.
event page and is now posted. And the websites for each of our speakers, panelists today are also posted. So yeah, if anybody's, I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording now.